Looks like we're on.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Bertini, and I want to welcome you all to the Friday Transportation Seminar here at Portland State University. And we're very pleased today to have Metro Councilor Rex Burkholder to speak about the updates to the Oregon Transportation Plan. And I'm going to turn it over to Rex. Thanks so much.
Great. Thanks very much. I kind of feel like Captain Jean-Luc Picard here at the control station, so I'll try to ignore all the technology, but just to make this presentation work. My name is Rex Burkholder. I'm a Metro Councilor, and I'm in my second term, my first year of my second term on the Metro Council. And Rob asked me if I would do a little bit of talking about my history and how I got here before we get started. Let's say in the beginning I was a PSU graduate, so we'll go back to that. Actually, I moved to the Portland area in about 1980, 81, something like that, and soon found that we're going to have a child in my family. I had a part in that, I must admit. And so my wife said, go back and finish your degree, because I didn't have my bachelor's degree. And being one of many place-bound people who are PSU students, I came to PSU and finished a degree in biology, got my teaching certificate, and then taught for a few years in the Portland Public Schools, and then went off in my midlife crisis at age 30. So I hope it wasn't midlife, live a little longer than 10 more years, but went off to graduate school at Tufts University in urban and environmental policy. And my focus there was really on the management of nonprofit organizations. I had been on a number of boards of organizations here in Portland before that, neighborhood associations, an alternative energy house, demonstration house, and realized that the management skills that's one thing that's missing. There's a lot of talent and knowledge about the issues in the nonprofit world, a lot of passion as well, but a lot of times not a lot of knowledge about how do you get an organization up and running and keep it running for a long time. I came back to Portland. I actually worked at Portland State University in the Student Development Office for a short time, and then started up an organization kind of on the side that turned out to be a career and launching me into this area, which I helped start the Bicycle Transportation Alliance in the early 90s, and then became a staff person there for about 6 years, doing mostly the policy work and advocacy training work for the organization. And then complained a little too much to my board of directors that my Metro Councilor never listened to me. And they said, well, we can elect you, and you'd be a good candidate. And I was like, okay, let's try it out. I had served on the Technical Policy Advisory Committee at JPAC as a citizen representative for a number of years. And that is a group that helps advise. It's staff level from the various jurisdictions in the region, as well as 4 citizens. Lynn Peterson here has been on there too. And so it was an opportunity for me to get involved and to talk about the issues as I saw that, which is from how do we make the communities better places to bicycle. And then as part of that work I did, I helped start a group called the Coalition for a Livable Future, which is now 60-plus organizations that work on sustainability, and they represent everything from Thousand Friends of Oregon with Land Use Community Development Network, which is affordable housing, the Audubon Society, Conservation, Bicycle Transportation Alliance, that's transportation, and many other groups in that 60 groups. So that brought in my perspective, and actually I think really helped a lot for me when I ran for office and actually in office as a Metro Councilor. My focus is still transportation in the context of that transportation is what creates communities. It's one of our major forms of civic infrastructure investment. And if we do it well, we get really great places to live, safe, clean, convenient, exciting, accessible. If we do it poorly, we end up with dirty, divided, low property value communities. And so that's I think some of our challenges are, so what have we done well? What haven't we done well? How can we do more of the good stuff and less of the bad stuff? At the same time, meeting mobility needs and access needs for everybody. So that's the big challenge of transportation. Why I'm talking about this today is that Gail Achterman couldn't be here. And Gail Achterman is a member of the Oregon Transportation Commission. She's chairing the steering committee that's updating the Oregon Transportation Plan, and I am a member of that committee. And I'm based here, and I was able to step in and talk about this. Unfortunately, because of the timing and choosing me, I haven't actually walked all the way through this presentation myself. So what I'm going to do is go through it and talk about some things. So I may be kind of bouncing back and forth a little bit because I've been part of the process, but then I'm not sure exactly the order of the presentation, but we'll get there. And I advance it. That's right. Okay. So the Oregon Transportation Plan is the long-range, statewide, multimodal plan. It was originally adopted in 1992, but previous to that, And I can't remember what year, maybe Kay remembers there because she was involved with ODOT as well, when ODOT was actually not ODOT, it was the Highway Division. And they built roads, and that was a very simple, clear goal and objective for that organization. And they built a lot of roads, and they did a good job of it. We still were actually benefiting from all that investment that our past generations did in the freeway system and the highway system around the state. In 1992, and somewhat in the same time frame as the federal government changing its focus of transportation from freeway building to a more multimodal point of view, which came out in the Intermodal Surface Transportation Efficiency Act of 1991. In 1992, there was a new Oregon Transportation Plan adopted that really was a major shift from before, which is looking at how do we achieve all these multiple objectives, that looking at access, mobility, economic development, multimodal transportation, and put it in a document that helped guide the whole state. As usual with first attempts, it was a good attempt, but it can be improved, and that's what's the process going through right now. And so this process that we're going to talk about here, and I don't like reading slides. I think you guys can read, and that's my theory about PowerPoint. It's up there for you to read, and I don't have to do it for you. And I'll just give you, the context and such for these things. So this is a major update, and the time horizon is to 2030. So it's a little over 20 years ahead in the future. So, which that says right there. Okay, so it's a 25-year statewide modal plan, and it's supposed to guide the transportation planning at all levels of government. And so it's not just your state highway system, but it's also looking at your transit systems, your rail systems, pipelines, marine, air, all those types of things, and looking at how they work together. And that's the key piece of this, is trying to pull all these pieces together. And also is trying to look at, well, what are those challenges out there? And how I would frame this new plan update is that it's different than the previous one. It's actually more of a strategic plan for the state and looking at transportation's role in meeting the goals of the state. It's looking at to the future in terms of what are the future trends that are both positive and negative. And I believe the slideshow will go into those types of things. And also looking at the opportunities there and where we can affect those issues. This will just give you kind of the framework of it, and as I said, it applies at all levels here. We start with the Oregon Transportation Plan itself with broad goals, breaks that down into modal plans, each of these modes I mentioned, and then that, because of our state planning rules and federal law on this, there needs to be a coordination up and down between the Oregon Department of Transportation and down into your MPOs, Metropolitan Planning Organizations. There are five or six of those in the state. I'm trying to remember now. It's the Portland metro area, Salem, Kaiser, Eugene, Springfield. Those are the three big ones that have special requirements because they're over 200,000 population. Then you have Corvallis, which is new this year because of the census change. Deschutes County and Bend, which is new, and then the Medford area. So that makes 6 in the area. And one thing I'm doing on the side, because I can't stop organizing, we've actually started a MPO consortium with all the 6 MPOs coming together on a regular basis to talk about issues that are shared between us. This translates down into actually the programs in terms of how do you implement these policies is actually through the dollars you spend. And that's the State Transportation Improvement Program, the regional transportation programs like here, and then the local capital improvement programs at city and county level. We're actually just about the end of the process of the steering committee work. We've been meeting now for about a year and a half. The plan itself has not been released for public comment yet. It will be released next month. It's going to the Oregon Transportation Commission at their November meeting, and hopefully they won't change everything that we did, all the work we did, but the idea is then to release it for public comment for a few months, and hopefully this will say how long that will take, but because I can't remember whether it's 45 days or 90 days. But we had this committee that was made up of, the goal was to try to bring people who are good thinkers about transportation. And the members of the committee included Duncan Wise from the Oregon Business Council, not a transportation guy, but talking about what are the goals, what are you trying to achieve by doing this kind of investment. Included county commissioners, included myself, included representatives from the Trucking Association, American Automobile Association, members from around the state of other transportation groups as well. And then below that we had some policy committees that looked at more specific issues in depth, and they were technical level. And then eventually the Transportation Commission will come up with the final recommendation. So the process of the committee, as you can see, we went through here at what you do in a strategic plan. What are the trends? What are the issues? Things like peak oil. How's that going to affect us? Things like the fact that we haven't had a gas tax increase since 1992. That federal dollars this year we had a little bit of a perk this year in our federal dollars because we have a powerful Representative Fazio. But the trend is that those revenues aren't keeping up with inflation, especially with construction inflation increasing with Katrina and Rita, and then also with Chinese development and demand for things like cement and steel. Then we went through this process of trying to analyze. We did a number of scenarios with Cambridge Systematics, which are really fascinating. And if this doesn't cover this, we'll get back to those. Very fascinating about looking at different conditions in the future. If fuel prices go up, if we adopt congestion pricing, if we focused our investment in one particular area, and specifically in the North Willamette Valley to deal with freight, rail, and road bottlenecks, what would that impact be around the state? And some really eye-opening results from that. And then eventually we'll come around to this adoption by the Oregon Transportation Commission. Here's a few of the challenges that we're looking at in the future that we, for the first time, actually put out there and said, here are things coming that are facing our state. We need to think about how our transportation system can respond to that. Population growth. The metro area alone, we're doing a process, we're just beginning a process to relook at our 50-year plan. We're calling it the New Look. We haven't actually launched it yet. We're doing some scoping right now. But part of that is doing some analysis in terms of population growth. We are actually finding that our population is growing much faster than we predicted in the early 90s. That, if you recall, the early 90s was a recession. We actually kind of said, well, we know we're going to recover from the recession, so the population growth will be a little bit higher than it has been, but we are way off. And just in this part of the state, we expect to hit our 2040 numbers in 2020 in terms of population and about 2018 in terms of employment. That's for it's about 1.1 million people in this four-county area. That's like adding 2 cities the size of Portland in the next 20 years, 25 years. Huge changes, okay, happening all around the state. We have global warming, a major issue in terms of our transportation system. Our transportation system contributes about 38% of the CO2. So how we operate our transportation system has a big impact on that. And then how does transportation support or work against our land use goals that we have in terms of trying to build more compact, mixed-use communities where people don't have to travel. Other challenges is we're in a global economy right now, and we are a major port, a major shipping. We're very much reliant on shipping our goods out, and then also we receive huge amounts of goods from Asia especially that then get sent to the rest of the country, and that obviously fills the roads up. The uncertain global oil supply, we don't use the word peak oil because it's got political connotations. We say uncertainty now. And the price fluctuations that may occur and actually increasing prices that we see on that. And then safety and security of the system. If you have issues of domestic or international terrorism, how does that affect your transportation system and planning? Part of the growth is that despite we have actually a drop in vehicle miles traveled, which is, I believe, the VMP per capita is the middle line that's kind of flattening out there. We are actually seeing people having to drive less, and that's a lot of that because of our land use patterns that we've been trying to establish. Yet, with growing population, your total vehicle miles traveled is still going up, which has all your impacts on the roads being full, your air quality, safety, those types of issues. Some of the opportunities, as I mentioned, there's been a lot of investment in the infrastructure in the past. We do have a fully developed interstate freeway system with a number of options in your more condensed areas or your more urbanized areas. We're located in a place where, in the long term, will probably still be a major port for international trading. We're doing some work. The governor has had a part of a tri-state group of California, Oregon, and Washington looking at how do you deal with some of the issues of sustainability. How do you start getting a hydrogen fueling system, for example, or having diesel trucks having electrification at truck stops so that they don't have to idle all night. So we're doing some of those types of issues. Innovative technologies that we're very much advanced in the country in terms of our ITS systems on our freeways. And I know I've seen in your lab here the way you guys are collecting the data and using that data to do some analysis and research. we're pretty advanced. Almost our whole freeway system in the metro area has ITS set up in that. A lot of our local roads are set up that way. We also have traffic signal coordination, such all being done, and that has helped. We've seen a noticeable impact on congestion from that. I think the fact that the next to the bottom one is just the fact that we are aware of these issues and we talk about it. At Metro, at the regional table, this is right front and center all the time. We don't try, and on the statewide level, the fact that we're not pretending that it's business as usual, just give us a few more dollars, everything will be fine. We're actually saying there are basic structural changes occurring in our transportation system. So the analysis went into what are the transportation needs in terms of movement of people and goods, a financial analysis, what kind of money have we got and what can we do with that money, can it actually meet those needs, and then these scenarios, which I did mention. This is somewhat complex here, but these are the different scenarios that were done. They all have the 2030 time frame. The reference scenario was just a baseline, given today's investment and today's numbers, and just projecting those on a straight line up. And then did a few that looked at high fuel price. As I mentioned, that is based on, there's actually, and I can't remember how they figured it out. They figured out a certain rate of increase in the cost of fuel and then expected a changeover in technology or improved efficiency and stuff, so that price would level out eventually. We looked at flat revenue, that if there's never any increase in dollars from the state legislature, what do you do? Relaxed land use, that's actually a response to Measure 37. That if we had a lot of more development outside the urban growth boundary as farmers turn their land into developments, how would that affect our transportation system? And then a major number 2 is a major one, looking at how do you invest in operations, like taking things like ITS to the next step, doing intelligent highways so that you can actually get more flow of traffic through, or even to the really dangerous third rail of congestion pricing, and actually saying that if you're going to use the road, you should pay for that privilege, especially if you want to do it at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Monday. Major improvements, as I mentioned earlier, was looking at putting dollars into the North Willamette Valley in terms of freeway and rail improvements for freight moving, and fourth was to actually, do we do pricing on the whole system. They're measured by these criteria, and I'm not going to read through them, but each of these scenarios we looked at how they affect each of these different criteria. The major findings is, one, if we just business as usual, no new tax increases ever, which it's a difficult thing. I went to the legislature last session and talking with legislators there and saying, here's the problems, and laying them out, showing the numbers, and they said, well, I'm sorry, I made a pledge during my campaign that I will not raise taxes. Therefore, I can't even talk to you. We're done. Conversation over. Despite the fact that we have this obvious need for this because of growing population and growing demands on the system. So there's a political hurdle we have to get over, but it's the find that we just see an incredible breakdown in that system over time. If we do the operations, really focusing on how do you use more technology to try to make the systems work better. The urban areas obviously have a big benefit from that, because this is where we have congestion. If you look around the rest of the state of Oregon, the issue is not congestion. The issue is, are the roads that you have falling to pieces or not? They don't need new highways in Deschutes, Deschutes they probably do some, but they don't need it in Sherman County, for example, or Grant County, Umatilla. There, it's the question really is, do you let the road go back to gravel again, or do you keep it paved? In the urban areas, operations has a major impact on how people move, mainly on local and regional, not the long distance travelers. Because when you come, if you're driving all the way from San Francisco up to Seattle, for example, in your truck, coming through Portland is not a major issue. It's just a little slowdown on the whole picture. The major improvements in tolling have an incredible positive impact in terms of mobility. You actually make either major improvements where you increase capacity, rail or road. You obviously can move more through, but the tolling one, where you don't have to add new capacity in terms of concrete, you actually increase your capacity quite a bit, because people will change their behavior based on dollars and cents. Pricing, the one that's somewhat political, it maintains that capacity, and also it supports our land use pattern, because people will consider in their decisions about where they live and where they work, the financial cost of travel is a major component of that decision. And if you price that, we find that people, in the model at least, and I think in reality, we find that people try to live closer to their work and travel less. The fuel price increases, it has limited economic mobility impacts. People still move around because they have to still move, but what we find is that it has major impacts on the economy. We find that if you have this high fuel price scenario, we will see it's more than just the fact that individual saying, you know, I have to pay $4 a gallon for gas. It's shippers who have to are they going to ship their goods to market? Can they compete with other areas of the country? And it has a major economic impact. In Measure 37, we found that even though it's, I consider a bad plan, a bad idea, and I'm personally happy that the courts overturned it, we found that from a transportation standpoint, in the macro scale, it didn't have much impact. We saw some local congestion occurring because you'd have more development out in the country and the roads were too small to handle the development. But in terms of major movement, there wasn't much effect. Policy themes here. The goals, of course, are to develop an integrated transportation system that everybody has a choice on how they move, and shippers have a choice of how they ship. You want to maximize your existing investment. It's a lot of money out there. It's trillions of dollars of public investment and capital over the last decades. So you want to make sure that that stays in good condition. And you want to try to say, what can we do to keep freight moving? And part of that is how do you keep it moving without having negative impacts on local communities is a part of it. And then the issue of sustainability, I think, is one that's I think we all consider this as a baby step. Because transportation, anytime you have to move anything or anybody from one spot to another, it has costs. Energy cost, it has costs in terms of how you use your land and such, and those all impact sustainability. So I think what we're doing is starting to think about how that might really work. And of course, it has to be connected with land use very closely. Environmentally responsible, the support of walkable, bikeable communities, very much consistent with what we're trying to do at all the areas of the state in their communities. Safety and security is an issue. It's put together a lot, but I really think, personally, I think we should separate it out a bit. Safety is, why do we have 500 people a year get killed on the roads in Oregon? And that number has leveled off a bit, but it hasn't really dropped much more since we enforced seatbelt laws and drunken driving laws. We still have 500 people a year killed. And is that acceptable? I don't think it is. I think that's an issue we need to deal with. The security issue is more looking at terrorism and those issues and how you can, when you're a major freight port, how do you actually deal with all those containers that come through and make sure that they're not carrying something you don't want to have there? And then finally, the big challenge that everybody always talks about is, okay, now how do we actually pay for this, which is that funding system, and what might actually work? The concept, the first one is kind of code word for user pays, and it goes beyond just tolling or gas tax. It actually goes into, if you put a new interchange in on a freeway and the property there goes up in value incredibly, who pays for it? Think of Cruise Way down in the western part of Lake Oswego. Now, Cruise Way is very successful because there's two major highways that intersect right there. The property owner of Cruise Way did not pay a penny towards that $70 million interchange improvement was done a few years ago. And yet, because they're there, they caused the need for that interchange improvement. And so the idea is there a way of capturing some of that value from the public investment? We do some of that now with our light rails, for example. And some of that's through urban renewal is a classic case of that. You put a light rail in, North Interstate's a good example. You put a light rail in, and how you help pay for that light rail is through capturing the increased value of that property around there and to help pay for that. And it's not, a lot of that's not being paid for by the citizens as a whole or federal dollars. A lot of it's being paid for by a local increase in property values from that investment. Talking to each other, that's always a good one. We have a very fractured transportation planning and implementation system in the United States, and here is just the same. We have ODOT with its real estate and its funding source. We have TriMet, for example, with its real estate and its system and its funding source. We have cities, we have counties, we have Metro. They're supposed to coordinate, but it's very complex, and there's always inefficiencies the more complex you get a system going. So the idea is, well, how do we coordinate more? And that's the plan. One of the purposes of the plan is to get that coordination increased. And then the new fun thing is public-private partnerships, which we'll see. We have the first 3 are actually in the process of being discussed right now. We don't know. They're a new idea and that hasn't really been tried out too much in the country yet. There seems to be some potential there for cheaper development and delivery, and we hope that happens. Money. Let's talk a little bit about money. And this one, I'm probably not as familiar with this piece here, but this just gives you a quick little chart about the dollars that we expect to have, and this again is over 25 years, $2.15 billion, and this is for, I believe it's for modernization. There's other dollars, quite a bit of money, but a lot of that goes just to maintain the existing system. That actually eats up the majority of transportation budgets. It's just keeping the current system going, pothole filling, new surfaces, bus replacement, those types of things. And so there's just, this is kind of a, what do you want to call it, just a test, a trial balloon out there, just looking at are there different levels of investment and how much do they cost to achieve some of these pieces. And it just shows you three there. Well, let's, just before I run off to this one, and because there is some small print there at the bottom, that the current spending is that the flat spending with a little bit of additional dollars, but again, it doesn't keep up with what we're trying to do, and so inflation actually eats away at your value of that one. Level 2 is saying, can we do that and preserve our existing infrastructure and services, which in itself means we need more money, and it's another $500 million of that time just to maintain, to counteract inflation. And this was actually done before the price increases of Hurricane Rita and Catherine, their impact on the cost of development, which has a huge impact on cement and steel prices. So this is actually probably conservative. You probably need to raise this up quite a bit to do that. Then level 3 was just looking at some new funding methods to do some specific things, specifically the large major investments in the North Willamette Valley in this area in freight rail and road improvements. Here's some of the key initiatives that we thought, okay, take all those policy goals, take all the analysis, all that, and what are some things we can do now and start thinking about implementing right now, and we call them key initiatives. And they're, again, trial balloons out there. Are these things that people think are valuable? And that's part of the public process to go out to talk to people about that. One of the key things is just let's keep what we have in good condition. You know, it sounds a little radical, but when you're faced with growth and the need for meeting the transportation needs of people, we traditionally, has happened not as much in this state as other places, but you just stop maintaining the system because you don't get much political bang for the buck for saying the potholes are filled. You know, you get a lot more political, I brought you a new bypass, or we put a new bridge across this river and vote for me. Not, you know, yes, we repaved and kept the thing from falling in the ocean, you know. So that's a key point there. Trying to use the new technology we have, information technology and other methods, to try to make the current roads work better and safer. We're doing quite a bit of that. If you see in the metro area, we have almost every on-ramp onto a major interstate is now metered. Right there, you've had an incredible impact on congestion. The other one is looking at the one that has the biggest impact, actually, is our transit system. Something about, I think it was 40%, we'd have 40% more congestion in the metro area if we didn't have a transit system working. And when people say, you know, why do you spend all that money on MAX? You know, what TriMet's a waste of money, they're subsidized. Well, if you killed that system and you put all those people back on the road, things would stop. You know, it'd be the end of the system as we know it. That and I'm trying to think of the other information technology. Oh, incident response. The guys who drive around those trucks at rush hour and help people get off the road and fix their flat tires, that about 50% of congestion is actually caused by incidents. This is probably a figure you know. But it's just that unintended, the guy runs out of gas on the way, and that will stop your system unless you can get him off the road and out on their way. The other piece is trying to look at this as a system as a whole. It's not a transportation system, and then you have a city or the environment. It's all works together, and it has to be integrated, and you need to talk about how the impacts of each of these affect each other. Integrating the transportation system, the code word for this is a seamless transportation system. It's a nice idea. I'm not quite sure how we're going to do it. We have a lot of turf, and we have a lot of silos, especially on the funding side. For example, any highway user fee, which includes registration, gas taxes, diesel fuel taxes, those types of things, they are constitutionally restricted in Oregon and 45 other states from being spent on anything except roads. Now you can put bike lanes and sidewalks because they're within the right-of-way, but you can't pay for transit and you can't do those other modes. And we have the same thing with transit funding, et cetera. They're siloed and they can't be spread across or move across those boundaries, and so that's a major challenge. Everybody wants funding that actually meets the needs. That's the sustainable funding plan. And then invest strategically in capacity enhancements. Another difficult issue. Just on the committee, there's a member of there who's a businessman from Medford, and Mike Burrell. You probably know him, Kay. And he's been on the aviation board for a long time, so he's been very active in transportation issues. And we had a presentation of the scenarios, and the scenarios showed that if you do major investments for capacity increases in the Portland area, mainly freight rail and access to the ports and such, you'd see a major increase in the economic activity in Medford, because there's Medford manufacturers, Medford businesses that need to either get their stuff out to the Portland port or the airport or back through there. His hand went up immediately and said, does this mean I don't get my interchange at the north end of Medford? So there you got your politics. That interchange would cost $20 to $50 million to put in. That will have very little impact, except Costco customers in Medford will be able to get to Costco faster. But if you did the same amount of dollars in the port access in the Portland area, you'd have an economic impact across the whole state. And that was significant. I think the number of jobs in Medford were something like 500 jobs just based on this strategy alone. But you have the issues of politics. So as I said, and I'm winding up here and we can answer some questions, there it gives you the dates. Good. This will hopefully be released by the Oregon Transportation Commission at their next meeting, as I mentioned. And then we have 4 months here, it looks like, for discussion and outreach to the public to see, does this make sense? And hopefully build some support for a new approach, which I think this is. And there will be doing some other outreach as well. And there's the website. So for all those watching the webcast in this room, you too can participate in the Oregon Transportation Plan. It's actually, just a personal note, to me it was a really great experience. And I probably shouldn't say this, but actually I wasn't, our head transportation planner, our head planner actually was invited to be on the committee. And he wasn't able to do it, so he asked, we tried to assign someone else to do it, and they said, well, they can be on a policy committee, but we really want someone more, with more stature in your organization to be at these meetings. So I said, I'll come. And they said, oh, no, you can't come. You're politically motivated. And so I said, okay, well, I'll come anyway, and I'll just sit in the audience at all your meetings. And because this is really important, and you have no one from the metro area on there that's talking about metro-like issues. And not just metro, the government, but a metropolitan area with huge amount of congestion, the economic engine of the region, of the state, and having major issues like the bridge across the Columbia River, all these types of things. Those things need to be at the table. And also, we have the biggest transit system. You have no one there talking about this stuff. So I went to the first meeting, and I thank Gail Achterman for doing this. She just said, Rex, get out of that seat and come out here in the hall. Let's talk. And we talked. She says, okay, you're sitting next to me. And so, I hopefully I surprised them, and I'm not as a partisan and advocate for my point of view. But it's been interesting to follow this and see it evolve from being an internal document for managing one agency to becoming something that says, here's a vision for the state, and here's how we can all work together to deal with one of the most critical issues that we have in the state, which is how does transportation support our communities. So that personally, it's been a really great opportunity to be there and be involved. And if you ever get asked to be on an advisory committee, you should say yes, because it's really interesting and you can have a major impact. So I'm going to stop there and answer questions, if you have any. Lynn Peterson.
Rex, a lot of what we've tried to do in the past is get funding criteria for projects so that you would know and understand the priorities and policies of an organization, and we've been able to do that at Metro. But we don't have that at the state level, the county level, or city level. Were you able to talk about that? Because that's one of the policy objectives, is to make this more understandable, right? About
Yes.
the priorities?
Yeah.
Did they talk about that at all?
Well, this is your 50,000-foot level, okay? If you remember from the chart at the very beginning, Oregon Transportation Plan says, here's the direction we're heading. Okay, then you go down and look at your modal plans and look at your state transportation improvement program. And the idea is that it should filter down from that. Now the question, I think you raised a good question, which I probably should go into the public. I think that would be a great public comment. It's like, how are you going to, I think the word is operationalize this? How do you actually take nice sounding goals and policies and make sure your money is spent to achieve those? We have done that at the metro level, and it wasn't easy, of course, because it was a change from what we did before. But I think it is a critical thing. And in that case, in the metro region, we didn't take our transportation goals. We took our community development goals. What kind of community do we want this to be? And we had those already developed through our Region 2040 plan, a healthy economy, safe, vibrant, thriving neighborhoods. We had a list about 8 different things. And we said, okay, let's spend our transportation dollars based on how they meet these goals. And that's, I think, worked really well. We've actually got some really great projects out of that. And so I think it's a good suggestion. We still have been working up at this level right now, and we haven't got down at level. I think the direction or the request for that would be a good request to put into this during the public comment part. No other questions? Oh, good.
You said there was 3 public-private partnerships being discussed. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. The touchman. You said that there's 3 public-private partnerships being discussed. Do you know what those are?
Yes. Yeah, can I tell what they are? I think they were just the decision last week at the Oregon Transportation Commission was to enter in negotiations with a firm. It's called Macquarie, I believe. It's an Australian firm that has built toll roads around the world. And there are 3 that were authorized by the state legislature to go ahead and develop an idea of a public-private partnership that could use tolling to pay for part of it if that's necessary. One is a bypass that goes around Dundee, so from on Highway 99E north of Newburgh. It would go around the cities of Newburgh and Dundee and connect back into 99E someplace either before McMinnville or after McMinnville. That's one. The other one is adding a lane onto I-205 from the I-5 intersection to, I think, about Johnson Creek Boulevard in southeast. And the third one is, something called the Sunrise Corridor, which is a planned transportation facility with different ideas of what it will be between I-205 and Highway 26 through the Damascus area. And it's pretty interesting. I've seen some of the results of the discussions that have been going on between this organization and the Oregon Department of Transportation. And they actually have a really interesting way of framing this. And the way they frame it is based on current, as you know, the current funding mechanism is you're not going to get anything you want. And nothing will change. We're actually doing we just did a corridor study on Highway 217, and based on our analysis, it'll be 2089 before we can build anything based on current funding levels. So 90 years or 85 years from today, we can actually start construction for a problem that's there today. So the issue is, do we do nothing or do nothing so far in the future? It's like doing nothing, or we raise taxes, which is always the winner, right? Everybody wants to raise their own taxes, or you talk about tolling. And you get something for it, but you have to pay for it to make it happen. So in our discussions, and also I think with the Newburgh-Dundee area discussions, tolling is now becoming more and more accepted by the public as if you want something, you got to pay for it, and if you're going to use it, those are the right people to pay for it. And we're looking at a lot of interest in the whole congestion pricing issue. And so not just a quarter to get on, a quarter to get off. It's going to be a time of day, use. And that's what this group is going to be looking into, is how can they deliver these projects, and what's the funding stream, and whether there's going to be public investment required as well, and then also whether the market will take it. And that's area actually where one of the few places I agree with the Cascade Policy Institute is that if you put a price on it and people think that that price is too high, then it's probably not necessary yet. Is that when they're willing to pay the price to pay for a new facility, then it means that you need to do that. It's a real break with traditional way of transportation service provision, though. That's a big change. Yes? That's why we're going to use high technology to solve all our transportation problems.
Perfect. Well, first I wanted to say that I was pretty impressed at how comprehensive the initial overview was. I mean, something like peak oil or in quotes, which I think is really not being looked at by most government institutions. That you guys are looking at that is pretty impressive. And I guess my question is, I was surprised when you said that Measure 37 would not have as significant an impact as on transportation as you might have otherwise expected. And I was just wondering if you could say more about that, because that was striking to me.
Yeah, well, again, remember that this is a statewide transportation plan, so the model is a statewide plan. So it looks at longer distance travels. And so the impacts that would come from more development outside the urban growth boundaries, there would be impacts, but they'd be local. They wouldn't have impacts on longer distance travel within the state. That's what the finding was, is that we tested it just because we said Measure 37 had recently passed. We thought, well, are we going to see a lot of change? And they found that they're just on the statewide model level, they wouldn't see it. Now, if we ran our models, we would probably see a lot of issues at the edges where these people would have to commute in and out of the region, because that's what they'd probably be doing. They wouldn't be working out there on the farms. They'd be commuting back into the city to work. So we'd see a lot more from that. We'd have a much bigger impact. But that'd be more sub-regional within the area. Yeah. Good. Oh, we got a couple more. Good.
You've said that the transportation system contributes to 38% of the carbon dioxide. So I have heard that TriMet is going to change their fleet to more different alternative fuels to reduce that. And in that case, is there any plan to reuse the existing fleet, or will they replace it with the new type of fuel fleets, or how?
Well, I'd have to say I can't really answer you. I know they've been experimenting with a diesel hybrid, but they actually were disappointed in that one, that they actually found that they weren't getting the kind of savings in terms of fuel, which means in CO2 emission as well. So I think those technologies aren't here yet, and I don't believe TriMet is considering switching to compressed natural gas. I think they're looking at, hopefully in the future, you'd have some other alternative fuel source like small diesels and hybrids, or some other fuel cell. But currently right now they use diesel, and I believe they're using, I'm trying to remember, we actually try to go in a deal with them to get some low sulfur fuel, but they may, well, Lynn, do you know, are they using B20? Or?
Manager Fred Hansen was here last week.
Okay.
General Manager Fred Hansen was here last week, and he talked about the
Okay.
fact that they are looking at using biodiesel, and they can use the existing fleet.
I think you can use at least a 20% mix of biodiesel without doing major changes. You can go to 100% with more, but the issue right now is the biofuel industry. They actually just had a biofuels fair last weekend at the Expo Center, and they're just not producing enough here. I think TriMet uses, is it 10 million gallons a year of diesel? We use 1 million gallons a year of diesel, Metro does, and you might wonder why. It's because one of the jobs that Metro does for the region is ship garbage from here to the east side of the Cascades to near Arlington. And so we buy 1 million gallons a year of diesel for running those trucks back and forth, which would be a great thing to do biodiesel in the gorge, especially because it's fairly concentrated and you're having trouble with air quality there. But right now we can't find enough even biodiesel right now even to do the 20% mix, the B20. So we are using smaller amounts in our transfer stations and such, but not for long distance shipping just yet, because there's just not enough production going on to do that. It'd be a great, the numbers are really good. Nitrous oxides, it actually has a slight increase, but all the other pollutants, it actually drops down. And you, sir?
It works. Rex, I noticed that you've made a couple points here through the policy themes and key initiatives. One of them is the integration of transportation systems across jurisdictions, ownerships, and maximizing what we have for a transportation system, and then also encouraging public and private partnerships. One of the areas that I'm curious about is sitting on 26 or sitting on 84 at rush hour. I'm sitting out there with express vehicles that are delivering goods and services and going about the same speed I am. So there's no express to it. With that in mind, the only thing that seems to be moving is max. And has the idea ever occurred, or have they looked at the possibility of putting on a freight car to the back end of a max and charging, and putting modularized units into it? You know, they even at a weigh station where they could offload freight goods and services from Hillsborough to the airport, from Gresham to the airport.
Well, there actually has been some of that discussion, and I think Chair Bryan, Tom Bryan from Washington County, has been a big proponent of that. I think some of the logistical issues are is security. Well, one issue is security of if you're going to put Intel chips onto a trailer behind the Max, you don't want people messing with it. Okay, so they're very expensive, very valuable, and that's the kind of freight you'd probably move on something like that. It's very valuable stuff. The other idea was to run it at night when there's no Max. The issue there is that is the time that that TriMet does maintenance on the tracks. So I think there's so it's been looked at a little bit. Another issue is, and this is an issue which I think is going to be in our future, but I'm not sure how soon, is the idea of using pricing. And I was talking with the manager of the MPO in Southern California in the San Diego area, and they're doing a lot of congestion pricing. They're actually building some new facilities, and their congestion pricing is dynamic. Every 6 minutes it changes the price to keep the express lanes running. And at rush hour, they actually charge trucks more. They actually raise the cost of trucks and lower it for commuters because they recognize that the need for movement at that time is people. But then off rush hours, then it's flipped, where trucks are much cheaper and automobiles are much higher. So the idea is to try to move some of that truck movement out of the rush hour time and move it into those off-peak hours, because you just can't move. You have so many people demanding to move in their cars and willing to pay for it. And down there, they're willing to pay for it, that you can't make a priority for shipping. But during the rest of the day, they can easily do that because they feel that there's the need for moving people is reduced. So I actually think that's how we're going to get there. 80% or so of our freight is moved on trucks, and I think that's going to. The rail system is not expanding much to achieve that. Some of this coordination too, the public-private stuff, a lot of it will be rail. Looking at how do we, what kind of public investments would really help make the rail system more effective. But still, trucks are going to be the major piece of it for at least the foreseeable future. But the Max idea has been thought about. I just, that's as much as I know about it.
Right. I'm just looking at another infusion of cash or revenue if the back end of that was going in the same direction that a freight would be going at the same time.
Yeah. And I do know they looked at it. There's a couple issues I've heard that make it a little bit more difficult. Rob.
We have a couple email questions, and I'll read them. I'll read the first one. You mentioned the Sunrise Corridor tolling option. If tolls are going to fund the project, how soon do you expect construction to start? Would the project be similar to SR 91 in California? And could you describe some of the options for the facility? For example, will it be a highway, freeway, parkway, et cetera? I added the last word, parkway, myself.
Well, I'm going to start with the last part first. It's actually right now going through the environmental impact statement process, and it has different shapes and different parts of the discussion. The first phase is separated 4-lane freeway is what's being proposed, and it's and I can't remember the end point. I think it's either Rock Creek Junction or 172nd Avenue. I'm not exactly sure 100%. I don't have a map either to show you, unfortunately. And the other part is where it enters into the area that the Metro recently added to the urban growth boundary called Damascus. And part of that, there's a joint effort between concept planning that whole area and doing the road planning or the transportation system planning, because it's more than just roads, it's the transit and everything else. And there's discussion between what is the role that should be played by the facility. And so there is debate going on between being one parkway, two parkways, or a limited access freeway. So that is still in the decision-making process. In terms of timing, the first step you have to do is get through an EIS and have that actually approved and agreed to on the regional basis, because it obviously is a regional issue. And if it's a state highway, the state would have to approve it as well. And then seeking federal dollars, I probably wouldn't even start doing that until your next time you reauthorize the federal transportation bill, which is in 4 years from now. And then the tolling piece, and I'd only be guessing the tolling piece would be able to accelerate it by a number of years to be able to do it in 2012, 2014. But again, it is still undefined, and how much it's going to cost is undefined, because each of those options have much different price tags as well. Number two.
Two, not unrelated, do you think that the metro area is ready for congestion pricing? Do you think that people will pay it without a major political uproar?
I think the answer is no. I don't think we're ready yet. I think how it will happen is the major projects that we're looking at that seem to have a lot of interest in them, people seem to connect tolling and a new facility, and they don't have a problem with that. Well, they have a problem with that, but they have less of a problem with that, let's say that. We have a number of major projects that I think will be really integral in any discussion of this going on. One is the I-5 crossing, that if we replace that bridge, put a light rail possibly with that, the only way really to imagine funding that is by putting tolls both on 205 and I-5. And so there you have the opportunity to also do that variable, and then you can use it as a congestion tool. Down in the southern end of the region, we're actually doing a corridor study that's going to look at the larger issues of there's a new facility that's proposed between I-5 and 99W. There's 217 work going on. There's I-205 work going on. And so we're going to be looking at, well, let's look at that holistically here. How does that function? And the issue on two of those already, there's tolling being considered, 217 and 205. I-599W connector is not that far along, but it'll probably be tolled as well to be able to pay for it. And then just a little farther east, you have Sunrise. You have all these things that are looking at tolling, and it doesn't make sense to make that a little bit more global approach to that. So I think it will come from people saying, I don't want you to raise my taxes, but if I use that road, I'd be willing to pay for it. And so we'll start at that level, and then you start hopefully getting people's thinking going about, this is working, it makes sense, and if we apply this comprehensively, then it'd be much more rational as well. Part of it is that doing it to just partial facilities is very difficult to actually even imagine, and how you're actually going to get your revenue out of it to pay for the facility. So I hope there's going to be an inevitability that moves that direction. Otherwise, we're just going to see congestion increase a lot more. One of the major issues, though, is that we have such a high growth rate, and many of those people are moving from other areas like California or Seattle, where they think that things are great here. They think, I only had to wait through that light 3 times. In California, I had to wait 8 times to get through that light. Or it took me 2 hours to go 10 miles in California. Here, it only takes 30 minutes at rush hour. So what's the big deal? So there's some of that issues of people's relative experience. We think it's awful if you lived here for a while. If you're new, it's like, it's nothing. Yeah.
So Metro has a transit-oriented development implementation program, and I understand that that's funded partly through some federal flexible funds. Is there anything in this state transportation plan that acknowledges the role of TOD? And also, do you know if any of the other MPOs in Oregon are doing any transit-oriented development, even if it's based on bus?
Well, the answer to the second one is yes, there are. Eugene is doing a bus rapid transit plan, and they're looking at doing transit-oriented development around that investment. So that's outside this metro area. They are looking at that. Metro was the first in 1999 was the first metro area in the whole country that used transportation dollars to actually write down the cost of development, and it's based on a very rigorous formula. It's based on reduction in trips that were taken on the road system by those people who might take trips if they didn't live in a transit-oriented development kind of structure. As far as the state, on the state level, again, this is the 50,000-foot level. It says support local land use goals and objectives, and it gets back to Ms. Peterson's suggestion, Councilor Peterson's suggestion, that we have criteria that are developed that to operationalize this, and this would be one of those types of things, looking at that. The state gets a lot of flexible dollars as well. And right now, dollars are so tight, they kind of mainly go to maintenance and small modernization projects. But there's that decision to be made, should you spend them on other things, rail improvements, transit-oriented development, those types of things, or if there's new funding developed, either through tolling or through other sources, how can we move dollars around and use those flexibility that comes with the federal dollars to do some of this kind of work. The problem is right now, it's in my metaphor is that the situation is so dire. We're all in the lifeboat. The ship has sunk. We're in the lifeboat. We're supposed to be rowing to shore, but instead we're kind of all looking at each other and say, if I act fast, I could probably eat that guy's leg, and that'll keep me alive for a couple more days. And someone else saying, I'll eat that guy's arm. Instead of trying to figure out how we solve this problem, because we are at the point where everything means, if you want to do anything, you like that metaphor? I'll think of a new one later. Maybe it's because sitting around that JPAC table too much. It sometimes gets kind of vicious.
I used to have tennis. I don't have.
That's right. Yeah. No, it's because we're at the point now where basic maintenance operations are not being able to be done. Local jurisdictions aren't being able to pave the roads, maintain sidewalks, keep buses running. Those types of things are getting so tight right now, much less meeting the demand when people say, fix this problem. There's traffic congestion at this corner. Come on, fix it. Or we need a new signal because people are moving too fast. It's really tight right now. And it's a very tough situation for all parties involved. And I think my role, I see as the role I'm in, is trying to keep everybody around the table and keeping thinking about, okay, we got to solve this problem. And it's not just our problem, it's everybody's problem. We got to make it everyone's problem and be innovative, think about new ideas, and work with the legislature, work with the public to try to come up with some solutions. Because otherwise, I'm tired of being chewed on. I guess that's it. I think we're all tired of fighting each other over that little tiny bit of money, and we need to start thinking about new ways of doing things, or else just say, okay, this is what you want. This is the choice the public has. And this planning process, Metro is going to be doing a planning process that I've talked about, the new look, which is the big issue, but we're also doing a new look at our regional transportation plan. And part of that's going out to the public and saying, what do you want? And how much are you willing to pay? And this is what you get for the kind of money you're giving us now. And if you want more, tell us what you want and give us the resources to do that. That's the editorial comment. Oh, would you like to ask a question?
I'll just make one up, sure.
Okay.
What impact would tolling have on the I-5 bridge? Like, how much would traffic slow down?
Well, what's really interesting, one of the issues with tolling, people's mental images of tolling is pulling into a giant toll plaza and have to find that, 35 cents and throw it in there, and then one misses the basket and they come chasing after you. The new technology, and this is the issue of technology nowadays, already in place in many places in the country. California, the Golden Gate Bridge, New York City, most of the bridges and tunnels, you have transponders, so you have an account and it's electronically deducted. So if you're a regular user, you'd have a transponder. And so I imagine those 60,000 commuters a day that drive across the bridge would all have their own transponder. And then you'd have, for people who don't have that, you'd have other ways to collect it, either through camera, taking pictures of license plates and sending bills, or other mechanisms, toll plaza for a small toll plaza for that. So you could actually have tolling and you'd actually get faster speeds. And the reason you have faster speeds, Washington State Department of Transportation did a study which they buried, that they were required to do by their state legislature to look at congestion. How do you fix congestion? And they looked at three scenarios, and it was in the Puget Sound area, the Spokane area, and this area, and they included Portland as part of that. And they looked at, okay, if you had unlimited money, can you solve congestion by building highways? And they got up to 25 lanes, and they still had congestion. Because, as you know, if you build roads, they fill up. People travel farther. Then they looked at a transit focus. And what they found was that you could put a lot of transit out there, and it'd have a little impact, but you still have a really crowded road because a lot of people wouldn't use transit even if more was there. Then they did a congestion pricing, and at fairly modest tolls, they found that they had higher transit use, less congestion, and actually no need to build a new bridge. Now, that's why it got buried, I think. But, it's people's behavior. People change behavior. And if you look at, especially the I-5 bridge, why are a lot of people driving across that bridge? It's not going to work. It's because they're avoiding an 8% sales tax by driving to Jansen Beach. And so there's a lot of trips that just pop across the river to go shopping at Safeway, at Home Depot, have a coffee at Starbucks, and they're not paying a sales tax. That tax system in itself creates a huge traffic issue because of that. And congestion pricing can have a big impact on that without. And I think to me, I don't know if it's a panacea for all our problems, but sure, it seems to help deal with a lot of those issues that we're talking about, just because we can change people's behavior through pricing, and people respond to that. Okay.
So you talked about the 6 regional places that are under consideration in this plan. Like, how were those chosen? Is it just the population rise there, or was it transportation needs in those certain areas was specifically targeted? Because I'm from the Oregon coast, and I see some improvements that could be made down Highway 101, especially around southern Oregon coast.
Well,
specifically.
this hasn't quite been translated into actually a transportation financing strategy. It hasn't got to that point, saying that we need to have one. And the modeling that was done said if you have limited investments, if you make them in the Portland metropolitan area, you'll have a major impact economically and mobility-wise around the whole state. Because this is the choke point. That doesn't say that there aren't problems other places. The issue is, with limited dollars, what can you accomplish? But the traditional piece is that you take what little money you have and you smear it like peanut butter, and everybody gets a little bit of sniff of it because it's so thin, and you actually don't solve anything. Versus putting a chunk in one place or a chunk in another place to make that can have a big difference. And that worked when you had a steadily increasing revenue stream. When the federal government actually put their dollars into funding the system. Again, we built the system 50 years ago. Most of it's falling down now. It's the natural life of infrastructure, and there's not a big chunk of dollars coming in to keep that going. So it doesn't say that the needs on the Oregon coast aren't important. It's just saying if you have limited resources, what has the biggest impact on the other goals you have, which is the economic development goals, and the other pieces that we have in there that I talked about. So it's actually, it hasn't been translated yet to, okay, where are we actually really going to spend the money? Here's some suggestions. And it has to go through the whole process. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. Oh, another one? Sure.
Just one more quick one. You can still push on. You had mentioned that there was like if we didn't have transit, there'd be like 40% more congestion or something. Can you just point me to where you get that statistic? And are there other statistics that talk about light rail's impact on congestion?
Yeah, I think if you go to this website would be a start. Yeah, because the backup information's there. All the technical reports and such are on that website, and if they're not available, then Gail can get that to you. I believe that actual data probably actually came from Metro in our transportation modeling analysis, because it was specifically, that was pulled out basically as an example of saying why is transit a good investment of transportation dollars. And so I have a feeling they were Metro information. I have my card here. I'll leave that with you, and then you can call me and I can connect you with the right transportation specialist. Because I have a master's degree, but it's not in transportation or in science. It's something else. So I'll connect you up with our planners that can give you that information. Mm-hmm.
Before we thank our speaker, I'd like to mention that last week Fred Hansen gave the seminar, and you're welcome to watch that online, and I think he spoke about that particular topic. And next week we have our Dean Emeritus, Nohad Toulan, speaking about the study that he led on what they call the freeway loop. And so we're very much looking forward to his presentation. The week after that's a holiday, no seminar. I'm going to mention the next one because it relates to some questions that came up, in that Matthew Kitchen from the Puget Sound Regional Council will be talking about Seattle's value pricing demonstration project, which is one of the new ways of talking about congestion pricing. Value pricing is another phrase for that. So I think that will be a very interesting seminar. So with that, let's thank Councilor Burkholder for
Thanks a lot. And I do have cards here as well.